Step outside tonight, after the dishes are done and the house goes quiet, and look up. Give your eyes 10 minutes to adjust, the way your great-grandparents did every night of their lives, back when the sky was the only screen a family owned. What you are looking at is the most reliable machine a human being can see without instruments. Thousands of lights, wheeling in perfect formation, rising on schedule, setting on schedule, every night, for your whole life. Now the part that should make you set down your coffee. In the oldest complete cosmology connected to your Bible, a book quoted by name in the New Testament, some of those lights are listed as prisoners. Prisoners, lights in the sky, carrying sentences, with a warden, a term, and a release date. The sky you were taught in school is a machine, gears and gravity, nothing watching back. The sky, in the oldest scriptures, is closer to a garrison. It has ranks, it has orders. And according to the Book of Enoch, it has a stockade for the ones that broke formation. Enoch sees the fallen stars 3 times, and this episode walks you through all 3. The first time, he does not know what they are, and what he guesses will unsettle you. The second time, an angel tells him exactly what they are, in one sentence, with a number attached to the sentence they are serving. And the third time, he watches the whole fall replayed from the beginning, like security footage, and the footage preserves a detail almost nobody talks about. One came down first, alone, the others followed. Stay for the third, because that order of events is the thread that runs from Genesis all the way to the words of Jesus himself. Along the way, you are going to catch the sky, doing something strange with your own eyes, no telescope required. And you will meet the quiet habit of translation that turned an army into wallpaper. If you want the sky read to you the way the oldest scribes read it, subscribe now, and keep your eyes up while you do it. Tonight's door is the Book of Enoch, describing what the fallen stars really are, and where they fell. First, 40 seconds for anyone new to this vault. The Book of Enoch is the ancient text, quoted word for word in the Epistle of Jude, kept as full scripture by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church in its 81-book canon, and found in 11 Aramaic manuscript copies among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Episode 1 of this channel walks its prison for fallen angels from gate to gate. Tonight, we read the inmates' files. Start where the ancients started, with the anomaly you can still see. Watch the sky over a few weeks, the way shepherds and sailors and priests once had to, and you learn its one great rule fast. The stars move together. The whole field turns as a single sheet. Formation perfect, night after night. Constellations do not dissolve. Orion never trades shoulders. And then you notice them, a handful of lights that refuse the rule. They drift through the formation, like officers walking through ranks. One of them, brilliant and white, hangs low near sunrise or sunset, and never strays far from the sun. We call it Venus. Another, unmistakably red, wanders month by month across the field, and every couple of years it does something that unsettled every culture that tracked it. It stops. It turns around. It walks backward against the entire sky for weeks, then turns again and resumes course, as if it had gone back for something. Astronomers call that retrograde motion, and you can watch Mars do it without any equipment beyond patience. The Greeks looked at those rule breakers and named them with a word that was not a compliment. Asteres planetae, wandering stars. A planetes was a vagrant, a tramp, a man who would not stay on the road. Our word planet does not describe what those lights are made of. It describes how they behave. The word planet is not a category. It is an accusation, fossilized. Count the wanderers the way the ancients counted them. Everything that moves against the fixed field, and you get 7. The sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. 7 wanderers, and the ancient world handed each one a day. Saturday is Saturn's day, Sunday the sun's, Monday the moon's, and in the Latin languages the rest of the set is still intact. Tuesday for Mars, Wednesday for Mercury, Thursday for Jupiter, Friday for Venus. You recite the roster of the wandering stars every time you make a plan for the week. Your calendar is a fossil of a sky full of persons, and you have been carrying it your whole life. Keep that split in your pocket, because the ancients did something with the anomaly that we no longer do. We explain the wanderers with orbits. They read the split morally, a sky where almost everything obeys, and a few lights visibly do not. Look to them like a household with discipline and a few runaways. You do not have to share that reading. You do have to know it existed, because it is load-bearing under verses you may have recited your whole life without noticing. And Israel lived surrounded by nations that took the personhood of the sky with total seriousness. In Babylon, the wanderers were not lights. They were gods on patrol. Venus was the goddess Ishtar. Mars was Nergal, lord of plague and war. Babylonian scribes compiled entire tablet series, cataloguing the stars and their omens, and the fates of kings were read off the sky's behavior like dispatches from a front line, which is the context that makes the first chapter of Genesis so pointed. When Genesis describes the creation of the sun and the moon, it refuses to use their names. It calls them the greater light and the lesser light, lamps set in the sky to mark seasons and days, fixtures installed by someone. Scholars have long read that as a deliberate demotion, a polemic aimed at the neighbors. Your gods are my gods, light bulbs. The Bible's argument with the astral religions was never about whether the sky is alive with power. It was about who that power answers to. So look at the grammar your own Bible uses for the sky. Deuteronomy chapter 4 warns Israel not to lift up their eyes to the sun, the moon, and the stars, even all the host of heaven, and be drawn away to worship them. Host is a soft English word. The Hebrew is Tsaba, and everywhere else you meet it, it means army. The same word gives God his war title, Lord of Hosts, Commander of Armies. So the warning in Deuteronomy is not about admiring scenery. It assumes the stars are a force organized enough to be worshipped, and dangerous enough to warn a nation about. Judges chapter 5 sings that the stars fought from heaven. From their courses they fought against Sisera. Job chapter 38 says that at the founding of the earth, the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy, two halves of one choir, stars and sons of God, standing in poetic parallel as the same crowd. And Isaiah 14 taunts a figure it calls Hillel ben Shakar, shining one, son of the dawn, fallen from heaven. When Jerome translated that into Latin, he reached for the Roman name of the morning star, the brightest of the wanderers, and wrote Lucifer, light-bearer. The most famous fallen angel in history is named after a planet misbehaving. In this grammar, astronomy and angelology are not neighboring subjects. They are the same census. Now you are ready to stand where Enoch stood. 3 sightings. Walk them with me. The first sighting is in chapter 18. Enoch is carried past the ends of the earth to a place he can barely describe. No heaven above it, no founded earth beneath it. A place he calls chaotic and horrible. And there he sees 7 stars, like great burning mountains, bound together. He has seen wonders for 10 chapters without flinching, storehouses of winds, the cornerstones of the earth, and this is where he finally has to ask his guide what he is looking at. The angel's answer comes in 2 parts. This place is the end of heaven and earth. This has become a prison for the stars and the host of heaven. There is that army word again, and attached to it, a word no machine cosmology can process, prison. A prison for stars only makes sense in a sky where a star can break the law. And before you decide that binding stars is Enoch being exotic, listen to the question God himself puts to Job, chapter 38, in every Bible ever printed. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades, or loose the cords of Orion? The Almighty's own resume, offered under his own name, includes shackling star clusters. Enoch did not invent the handcuffs. He just reported who was wearing them. The second sighting is chapter 21, and this time Enoch gets the charge sheet. The angel Uriel tells him plainly, "These are the stars of heaven, which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord, because they did not come forth at their appointed times." And he was angry with them, and bound them for 10,000 years, until the time their guilt is consummated. Weigh that sentence one clause at a time, because every word is doing work. The crime is not violence, not rebellion in some abstract sense. The crime is timing. They did not come forth at their appointed times. In a sky that runs on obedience, showing up off schedule is desertion. And the punishment is not annihilation. It is a term. 10,000 years, a number, a sentence with an expiry, which means somewhere in this cosmology there is a ledger where it is written down, and the book shows you the ledger. In chapter 43, Enoch watches the stars of heaven called forward by name, each one answering, and weighed in a righteous balance according to their light, their names, and their faithfulness to their appointed rounds. A roll call by name, a weighing by conduct, and your Bible keeps the same personnel file open. Psalm 147 says he counts the number of the stars and calls them all by their names. Isaiah 40 says he brings out their host by number, calls them all by name, and not one is missing. Read those verses the way you read a shepherd's evening count or a sergeant's muster. Number them, name them, confirm not one is missing. That is not how anyone talks about furniture. Nobody builds a balance to admire lights, and nobody takes attendance on things that cannot desert. A balance means judgment is in session. Which brings us to the third sighting, and this is the one I asked you to stay for, because this is where the book stops describing the prison and replays the arrest. Near the end of Enoch, in chapters 86 through 88, the book records a dream vision that scholars call the animal apocalypse, the entire history of the world, told in the language of a farm. Humanity appears as a herd of cattle grazing in their pasture. Heaven watches over them. And then Enoch says this, "I saw the heaven above, and behold, a star fell from heaven, and it arose and pastured among those oxen. One star, falling alone, taking up residence among the herd of mankind, before anything else goes wrong. Then, and only then, the text continues. I saw many stars descend and cast themselves down from heaven to that first star. The many follow the one. They mingle with the herd, and the herd begins to bear monsters, elephants and camels and asses, in the dream's code. The giants of Genesis 6 wearing fable's clothing. The pasture becomes a slaughter yard. And then beings like white men descend, the archangels in the dream's palette, and the vision gives us the arrest, almost in procedural language. One of them seized that first star which had fallen, and bound it hand and foot, and cast it into an abyss, narrow and deep, and horrible and dark. And afterward the many who followed are gathered, bound the same way, hand and foot, and cast into an abyss of the earth. One came down first, the rest came down after. Both got the same cell. The text remembers the order of the fall, and it is not the order most sermons teach. Because notice what that sequence quietly explains. Genesis 6 tells you the sons of God came down in the days of Noah. Isaiah 14 mourns a single shining one who fell alone. For centuries, readers have argued about whether those are the same event. Enoch's dream says no, and says it in pictures. There was a first fall, one figure, solitary, ahead of the rest. Then a second fall, a crowd, drawn down to where the first one already stood. Two descents, one destination. Keep that structure in your head and listen to how the New Testament talks. Jesus In Luke chapter 10 says, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." One figure, one fall, spoken as an eyewitness memory. Revelation chapter 1 has the risen Christ explain his own symbolism. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, stars and angels declared interchangeable in the Bible's final book. Revelation 9 sees a star fallen from heaven to earth, and then gives that star a personal pronoun and a set of keys. To him was given the key of the bottomless pit, a star that is a hymn, holding the key to the abyss, the very pit Enoch watched the stars get thrown into. 3 chapters later, Revelation 12 shows the dragon sweeping a third of the stars of heaven with his tail and casting them to the earth, the verse that centuries of readers have taken as the Bible's own headcount of the angelic fall, told, notice, entirely in the currency of stars. The many, following the one, dragged down to the pasture, exactly the traffic pattern Enoch's dream recorded. And Jude, the letter that quotes Enoch by name, reaches for the sky's rule breakers as his final insult for the corrupt. Wandering stars, he writes, asteres planetae, the same vagrant word the Greeks stamped on the planets, for whom the blackness of darkness is reserved forever. The New Testament did not retire this grammar, it notarized it. And before you wonder whether this star theology was some late fringe that crept into Enoch, the desert already answered you. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, the very oldest Enoch manuscripts include the book's astronomical section, the long chapters where Enoch is walked through the schedules of the sun and the stars, gate by gate, month by month. The fragment scholars catalogue as 4Q208 was copied in the late 3rd or early 2nd century before Christ, which makes the star material not a late addition, but part of the oldest physical layer of the book we possess. The scribes of Qumran were copying star tables and star trials side by side, 2 centuries before Bethlehem. Those fragments sit under conservation glass in Jerusalem today. The sun's gates, by the way, get their own episode in this vault, because Enoch does not just say the sun rises. He numbers its doors, 6 gates in the east and 6 in the west, each with its month and its winds, a full timetable for the machine the disobedient stars walked out of. That episode is coming, and it is stranger than it sounds. Now the honest pivot, because this channel does not sell you more than the text can carry. Nobody here is telling you that a meteor is an angel, or that Venus is serving a sentence, or that you should read tonight's sky as a wanted poster. What this episode has mapped is what the sources actually assert, and the assertion is consistent across 1,000 years of texts. The oldest witnesses treated the lights of heaven as a host, in the military sense. They treated perfect timing as obedience, deviation as rebellion, and they built their picture of angelic fall on the one anomaly anyone can still see, the handful of lights that wander while everything else keeps formation. Strip away everything speculative, and the simplest explanation that fits the evidence is this. The ancients watched a sky that kept perfect time except for a few lights that refused. They read loyalty and desertion in that split, and the Bible never abandoned that reading. It kept calling the stars an army. It kept letting them fall, fight, and sing. Translation just stopped saying so plainly. No translator ever lied to you. Committees at long tables simply kept choosing the safest available word, host instead of army, morning star instead of a name, and after enough safe words, the sky over the reader went from a garrison to a decoration. So, the title made a promise. Where did they fall? The sources give 3 addresses, in order. The first is a summit you can stand on. For the 200 who descended together, Enoch names the landing site, Mount Hermon, on the northern border of the Holy Land, the mountain whose peak still carries the ruins of the highest temple of the ancient world, and whose oath inscription sits in the British Museum. Episode 1 holds that stone. The second address is the pasture, which is to say, here. In the dream vision, the stars do not fall into a pit at first. They fall into the world, among the herds of men, and the world bears the damage. And the third address is the terminus. The abyss, narrow and deep, horrible and dark, the prison, at the end of heaven and earth, where 7 stars burn like mountains, and the bound wait out a sentence measured in thousands of years. A mountain you can climb, a world you are standing in, a pit no one can reach. 3 addresses, 1 direction of travel, and a ledger that says the sentence is still running. Before the last look at the sky, the receipts, everything you heard tonight is checkable, and you should check it. The 1917 translation of Enoch by R.H. Charles is public domain and free to read this evening. Chapters 18 and 21 hold the burning stars and the charge sheet. Chapter 43, the weighing. Chapters 86 through 88, the dream of the falls. The scholarly standard is the Hermon translation by Nicholsburg and Vanderkam, and the Qumran star fragments run from 4Q208 to 4Q211 in the catalogues. I say every source out loud because for now I have to. The day this channel passes 1,000 subscribers, YouTube opens up description links, and every text, every fragment number, every museum piece you hear about here gets linked below its episode. Subscribing is how the reference shelf gets built, and it is the one thing I will ask of you tonight. And leave me this in the comments as you go. Which light do you want mapped next? The morning star and the name Isaiah gave it, or the 7 stars the risen Christ says he holds in his right hand? The vault takes requests, and this Saturday, the whole ark in one sitting, from the oath on Hermon to the sealing of the pit, the complete story in one full documentary. Now go back outside. Same porch, same coffee gone cold, same 10 minutes for your eyes. Find the great field of fixed stars holding formation, the ones that will rise on schedule tomorrow and the night after, and on the night your great-grandchildren stand where you are standing. Then find the bright one that drifts. Every generation before yours found it too, shepherds on night watch, sailors steering by the fixed ones, scribes in Babylon logging the vagrant's position on wet clay. You are the newest set of eyes on the oldest sermon in the world, and it is still playing, with no sound. The star tables are still under glass in Jerusalem, numbered and catalogued. The phrase wandering stars is still printed in Jude, in every Bible sold today. Venus is still crossing the formation it does not belong to. Mars still stops, every couple of years, turns and walks backward against the field, and the stars are still keeping their appointed times, except the ones that never did.